Hello and welcome back to 1HiveTV. I'm your host T. Wells. I appreciate you for joining us. Today we have an awesome video for you on the Token Engineering Commons. Very close partner of 1Hive, one of the coolest projects in the public goods oriented space. Had a chance to sit down with the team recently to learn a little bit more about the TEC. I'm going to hand off to Tam to give us an intro and overview of the project.
So I couldn't describe what the TEC is without describing what a commons is. And a commons are just cultural or natural resources that are held in common by all members of society. It's not private, and it can be managed by a group for the collective benefit. You think about air, water, habitable earth, or knowledge, or open source software. Token engineering is a nascent field of engineering. And there's a lot of people who are really trying to solidify its existence as a proper and ethically led form of engineering. The idea came from conversations between Commons Stack and the token engineering community. People like Griff Green, Jeff Emmett, Dr. Michael Zargum, Angela Kreitenweiss got together and thought about this idea of using the Web3 technical build that Commons Stack is putting together and the cultural build that they're putting together, which is based on Eleanor Ostrom's 8 principles for managing commons, and using this design pattern to launch a commons for token engineering. So the TEC mission is to be a Schelling point for the token engineering community and to design and encourage ethical principles, standards, tools, and methodologies. Our values are really human-centered. We're a really human-centered community, and Eduardo from Communitas will share a lot more about that coming up. We are 12 different working groups, so I can totally relate to somebody coming in and being a little overwhelmed by what's going on. But we have 14 stewards and about 1,500 people on our Discord server. So these working groups focus on different aspects of what we're trying to advance, and the stewards are the super spreaders of our MVV and the servant leaders of the organization. So how are we launching this commons? I just want to show you very quickly this 2-phase process. What's unique about the hatch is that it's a warm, closed token offering. It relies on collaborative economics. So the community builds the parameters for the economy ourselves. We've already launched phase 1 and raised 1.5 million wrapped XDAI. And we are in the process of phase 2, where we're setting the parameters for this economy that we're going to steward together.
Yeah, I know throughout phase 2, you guys have been super active around in the Discords of different DAOs, sharing with the communities about the tool you've built and how you plan to use it to launch the TEC economy. So Mitch, could you share a little bit more about the parameters working group and how the tool works?
We started kind of identifying the parameters that we needed to set in order to take the commons to the next level. And so with that, in our parameters working group, we designed a commons configuration dashboard, which will basically allow our commons, our community, to collaboratively design and iterate upon the architecture and the settings for our final commons. And so this is the actual dashboard where you can put in the parameters and see the simulations of like how these effects will work within your commons configuration. This is the contributor vesting. So this is our vesting schedule for hatchers. And so we use a token freeze and a token thaw to decide the linear function that hatchers tokens will be vested at. After that, we have the augmented bonding curve simulator. Here we can put in different values like our commons tribute, which will be the amount that goes to kickstart our commons projects. The entry and exit tribute, which will allow the commons to have a constant stream of funding. The really cool thing about this is that you can actually simulate transactions on the curve. And so you can simulate buying TEC tokens with XDAI or selling TEC tokens to receive XDAI. And so we can pop in a transaction here. We want to buy 200K, and then it generates the transaction. And then you can see it's actually simulated on our curve, and we can see exactly how many TEC tokens we receive. We see the slippage, we see the price movement. And so using these tools here, we can actually make the best economic design. After that, this is the DAO voting module. So this is used for making decision votes on gardens. You can see all of the parameters here, setting our vote duration, our quorum, delegated voting, quiet ending, and the execution. You can see exactly how these times work out in relation to each other, so quiet ending and delegating, and how long the voting process will take. The final one here, which is fairly complicated as well. This will be the conviction voting settings, which honestly we've learned a ton about. So you can see here, similar to Gardens, they have also one that simulates conviction voting settings. You can put in your spending limit, your minimum conviction, and your conviction growth, which basically dictates how easy or how hard or how slow or how fast it will take to pass funding requests from the common pool. Additionally, you can see if you want to pass proposal, in what time frame, and you can also generate a funding request simulation. Say we wanted 10,000 XDAI from the common pool. How much is in the common pool? Say we've got 1 mil, and then your effective supply, and then you can just generate it right there, and you can actually see how many tokens you'll need to pass that funding proposal in a given amount of time. And so once you've got the best design, you've like thought it out, you've figured everything, you can go through, you can add in all your different strategies and your ideas here, compile them, do any last minute tweaks, and then after that, you submit an issue. This goes into a GitHub repo, which collects all of the issues, and then that eventually goes into our token log. And then we use token log with quadratic voting to actually use our TECH tokens to vote on the best design. And at the end of our total process, we're going to have ideally the best design that's totally aligned with the community. We've all voted on it. We've all had time to debate it. And then that is the actual Commons configuration that we use to complete our Commons upgrade.
I think leaning on the educational perspective of this, even people who can't vote are able to use this to learn about conviction voting and augmented bonding curve and designing economies like this.
Yeah, definitely. That's a really good point, Tam. And so if we're looking at it like outside of the technical aspect of the dashboard itself, like we've been having well over a month now of param parties and param debates. And so this is where the collaborative point comes in. It's like we all get into like a Discord voice channel and like we're designing these parameters together, coming up with our own designs or forking somebody else's design to like make little tweaks here and there. Doing that iteratively and then bringing them to the table, then having param debates helps us to think critically about them as well. Just through this whole process here, even people who didn't participate in the hatch, but just jumped into the community, like they've got this fresh perspective and they just bring things to the table that you never thought of. This has just been a constant process of evolution for the TEC and for token engineering in general. And so it's really exciting to see all these different tools coming out, because like augmented bonding curve simulators and conviction voting simulators, we kind of invented these ideas, but then putting them into practice, we need to be a little bit more critical about these things.
The tool on its own is amazing. It's really cool to me that you've sort of built out this, what essentially is this off-chain governance component or whatever. I don't know how you describe it, but the collaborative part, because someone could go and use this and launch a project on their own. The combination of then adding the group dynamic is really what I think is awesome.
Yeah, it's been really a pleasure just to see all the different ideas coming out of this process. And it's been great to see it go from, the early stages of putting together graphs and wireframes to like people designing economies around it.
As Mitch was saying, we've spent so much time ourselves learning about these parameters, and every conversation adds something new and affects our thinking and makes each of these proposals even stronger. So it's sort of like this mass education at the same time. The point of this is really education, to educate people about token engineering and Web3 and how to build these cryptoeconomic systems.
Well, and when you think out a year, 3 years, like the feedback loop into the system is really going to be fantastic too. I mean, to see how much of expectations that are set through using the tool pan out, maybe some are better than expected, some are not. On to Ivy, and we're going to be talking about transparency now. Tell us a little bit about what you've been up to and how it sort of feeds into the TEC.
So I'm Ivy, and I'm co-stewarding the transparency for TC together with Zeptimus. And I want to talk about why transparency is important. In DAOs, especially the TEC, it's not just about the technical codes, but also about the culture. And as part of our culture, we want to build trust and commitment among the community members. And to do that, we need to establish transparency. At the TEC, we believe that mutual monitoring and accountability are important. As TEC is deeply rooted Ostrom's principles, like what Tam said. So the Transparency Working Group has adopted the fourth principle, which is about monitoring the commons. Transparency is an important ingredient for monitoring the commons. So in Transparency Working Group, our main goal is simply to make the TEC information available and accessible to the community. And we also want to make our actions and decisions more visible. How do we do that? So for over a year now, we've been recording every single working group call and uploading them on our YouTube channel. So you can check out our YouTube channel and you can see all the recordings of our meetings. So we are building this unique digital archive that everybody can look back into, that the future comments can learn from. Now we have around 700 videos uploaded there, and we are now on our 61st community call. Everybody
Wow.
can join our community call, and every Thursday, 8 p.m. CUT. If you want to be part of it, just so you know, it will be recorded and be uploaded on our YouTube channel. Another thing that we do at Transparency are the audits. This is one of our tools to keep the working groups accountable. Each working group has a transparency rating that's based on manifesto, roadmap, and contributors. And we posted this transparency rating or transparency level in our forum. I can also share the link later. And you can see the level of transparency of each working group based on those components. In the future, we plan to make the transparency audit more holistic for the TEC community. So we will be also including the fund movement. So, after the Commons upgrade, we will be sharing the fund movement of the TEC as part of the audit. And as advocates for transparency, we want to help make sure that all stewards' decisions are made with transparency in mind. If you want to get involved in transparency, we can train you. We can train you to record the call, and you can also do it for your own DAOs and community.
Cool. Yeah. I think transparency is something people need to give a lot more attention to, not only for its cultural implications, but the legal ones. Information symmetry is something people probably won't care too much about until they really need to care about it. So the TEC, again, out ahead of the curve here, and congratulations on that. Next, on the cultural side of things, I know we want to turn to Edu to share a bit more about the Communitas working group.
I've mentioned cultural build, and there is a huge part of cultural build that I think most of organizations and DAOs are trying to tackle right now, and which is orientation and retention of membership, and how do we dynamize communities online. The TEC has been implementing different iterations of this process, and we start with Hatch Outreach, which was a process to basically create a connection and build relationship with the potential hatchers of the TEC. And that naturally evolved thanks to Katie, our orientation coordinator and leader at the beginning. That evolved to Communitas Working Group, which is a working group dedicated for community building. All the exercises and all the forms and shapes that could take community building, it's taken by this working group. And this working group basically tackles how we build the first part of orientation, how we build a process that is smooth for newcomers, and how we translate a newcomer into becoming a potential contributor to token economics. You should go to one of the mid sessions, one of the parameter sessions. Oh, you are interested on the legal aspect because you are forming a DAO. Then you can go to Ivy's also legal working group and so on. So it's this idea of we can be as integrative and as inclusive even though we are behind a screen. So it's how we sort of make this process that usually it's so complicated for any DAO. Once you enter, how you get the culture of the DAO, how do you connect with that culture of the DAO, and how that translates in you staying in our community. So that's what we are trying to tackle on Communitas Working Group. And now we are past the first part of the orientation section, and we are moving towards a life cycle. How do we keep retentions in our server? How do we sort of make a newcomer become a contributor and a stable contributor to the community? We have also created other cultural aspects like the TEC Lounge, which is a safe space for everyone. Everyone can join, and it's a non-related to work space. So we talk about what was your last movie you watched and so on. And this idea to connect beyond the screen and connect in other aspects that are more human related. So the idea is that we created also this format of guides, which is a guide that serves as a way to welcome everyone. And that guide is available for anyone to use. And the idea is that we become this kind of front desk, this front desk to token engineering that also is welcoming besides how cold sometimes the code could look. And the idea is that you sort of make that leap into a stable contributor in our community.
There's a really great article on the TEC's Medium right now called Permissionless DAOs and Why Onboarding is So Difficult. It's a complication that a lot of DAOs are experiencing with how do we attract and then find matching skill sets with and help people learn about our culture, especially since we have a pretty specific culture that's really unique to the TEC that's been carefully crafted over more than a year now. I really recommend that article. It's by Gideon Rowe. It really talks about some of the challenges Communitas is facing as the group dedicated to basically the entire onboarding experience for anyone, and then the community management aspect and some solutions that we've applied to help solve that. These are problems every DAO is facing. One of the success criteria for a DAO is like you get on the Discord server and there's people there and there's work happening and things are being done. And that's really what the Community Task Working Group is dedicated, is to making sure that people are finding matching pieces of work, finding matching interests, and if they have intrinsic motivation, are able to jump in and just start doing.
Gideon is one of our main contributors. It's a guy that brings a lot of expertise to the Community Task Working Group and in general to the ecosystem of the TEC. And he's an excellent writer. He created this piece in Medium that Tam mentioned. He gave us this perspective of the things that we do here on the TEC can be seen and applied by others, and how we contextualize the things that we do in a larger scale so other communities can also learn from this. We aim to be a common. So also our knowledge, our internal knowledge of the things that we are, the tooling that we are developing, could also, in the cultural aspect, could also be part of any other DAO if they wanted to
wrap things up today, like for the first question, just a little bit different, like the journey so far, what has been one of the biggest challenges? So it could be like anything up until now. And then the second question would be looking forward. What are you excited about in the future?
Michael Sargem made this amazing tweet a few months ago about transparency. It's nothing without accessibility. One of our biggest challenge is how we translate something so technical as this token engineer to the newcomer who is joining, and how we make that easier for them. It's one of the things that we look forward to sort of improve and make it more accessible. We are working toward this process of, as I mentioned, the life cycle, and I'm really looking forward to see how we can come out with this onboarding process that acts as a whole for any newcomer who joins, or any person who, doesn't matter which level of expertise you have in Web3, you have the means and the ways to get into the TEC without having any blocker. That for me is the biggest challenge, and also the thing that I'm looking forward the most. How about you, Mitch?
The biggest challenge for me has been getting people to understand what we're doing, like with the collaborative economics and the collaborative governance, because it's not easy, all these parameters and numbers and stuff. And so it's like really taking the time to educate a community on how all these things work, and then getting them to feel empowered to participate. I think we've been largely successful in that point, but it's taken a lot of work. And then looking into the future, I would say it's once we launch with our Commons configuration, all the different learnings that are going to come in once we like open ourselves up to the outside, and how our Commons is going to evolve as we keep on learning new things, and eventually how new Commons will spring up copying the framework that we've built, and what kind of insights that they're going to create along their journey as well.
I have to say there's two things that I would say are the biggest challenges so far. It's really just like permeating our culture. You know, culture is our North Star, and there's definitely things that we sort of push the boundaries, and it's sort of like having a look at being like, oh, that's not how we in this culture do that, and we need to inspect what we're doing. It's been challenging, you know, it's not something that's simple to do. And then the other thing I would say is, you know, we're all decentralized. We all work from any place that we happen to be in the world, and there's 12 different working groups, and they're really focused on what they're doing. So this really transversal coordination of many different working groups and many different contributors and many different people with many different time zones. I mean, that's really a huge challenge too. And I'd say that's something that I also think we're doing fairly well. But those are, I'd say, the two biggest challenges. And then what I'm excited about most, this is just in general, but I'll even say in 6 to 12 months, we're going to see a little bit of this. It is the impact TEC will make in the world. It's like how we are going to shape the world based on the projects that we're able to fund, the people that we're able to bring together, who's going to spark new ideas and innovation. I mean, we can already see it's happening right now. In these praise debates, we're getting some of the most brilliant minds in token engineering together to have conversations and share different perceptions that they have. It's that community of people that I think are going to make ground shifting changes in the world. Okay, it's going to happen for sure, and we're going to even start to see the beginnings of it in 6 to 12 months.
The other personal challenge that I encountered is finding the legal person for the TEC. Like in every DAO, it's kind of a challenge because the legal aspect of DAOs are still ambiguous. And especially if we're launching a token, we want to make sure that there won't be any legal issues that might be associated with our economy and what we're doing in the TEC. Very excited to see key projects coming in and the TEC helping them and supporting them and funding these projects.
Even if you didn't understand anything of this video, please come join us. We will explain to you thoroughly on one-on-ones. We have guides waiting for you to sort of explain you every concept that may be confusing. And we have great orientation sessions. We have praise sessions, we have community calls, we have a lot of spaces that you can sort of join and be part of and learn more about us. Overall, learn about token engineering, which is a field that will be in our future for a long.
Everybody have a great holiday, and we'll see everybody soon.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye. Thank you so much.